Hello, welcome once again to the second part of the presentation on Brown and Levinson's theory of politeness. And this time around, we proceed to look at the politeness strategies that Brown and Levinson have put forward or have outlined as strategies for trying to mitigate face-threatening acts. Politeness strategies are used to formulate messages in order to save the hearer's face when face-threatening acts are inevitable or desired. Brown and Levinson outline four main types of politeness strategies. The first one is board on record, and then negative politeness, positive politeness, and off record. What we'll do now is to look at each of these politeness strategies in greater detail, beginning with board on record. Board on record strategies usually do not attempt to minimize the threat to the hearer's face. However, sometimes board on record politeness strategy can be used in trying to minimize FTAs implicitly. Remember, FTAs is short form for face-threatening acts. Often, using such a strategy will shock or embarrass the addressee, and so this strategy is most often utilized in situations where the speaker has a close relationship with the audience, such as family or close friends. Brown and Levinson outline various cases in which one might use the board on record strategy, and these include where there is great urgency or desperation, as in, watch out. Suppose somebody has seen a snake approaching a friend. In that particular case, because there is great need for urgency, this person will proceed to say, run or watch out, without really thinking of whether what he or she is saying is going to threaten the face of the other, because there is great urgency or desperation. Another instance where threat minimizing may not occur is where one is speaking as if great competence is necessary. For example, when one begins a statement or a speech with listen and listen good. Or another good example is where one is in a task-oriented setting. Suppose you are in a carpentry workshop. Obviously, if you want a hammer, you simply say, pass me the hammer, without conscious regard as to whether the person you are talking to will feel threatened. Another instance is where there is little or no desire to maintain or save someone's face, as in, don't forget to clean the plates. Here, it shows that the speaker has no desire at all to save the other person's face. It could be that it's the mother telling her daughter or son. Or where you're doing the FTA in the interest of the hearer, where, for example, you are telling somebody that you have left your headlights on. Obviously, this FTA is in the interest of the hearer, and so most of the times people will do it board on record. Again, instances in which the threat is minimized implicitly. For example, when you are welcoming someone, come in, because in this case there is no need to worry about threatening the visitor's face. Offers are another instance. For example, where you're making an offer, leave it, I'll clean up later. With such an offer, there is no need to try to mitigate the hearer's face. Or where you're asking someone to eat. So that is the first strategy. The second strategy is that to do with positive politeness. Positive politeness strategies seek to minimize the threat to the hearer's positive face. They are used to make the hearer feel good about himself or herself, his interests or her interests or possessions, and are most usually used in situations where the audience knows each other fairly well. In addition to use of hedges and perhaps attempts to avoid conflict, some strategies of positive politeness include statements of friendship, solidarity, compliments. The following examples are from Brown and Levinson. 1. Attend to hearer's interests. H here simply means hearer. Attend to hearer's interests, needs, or wants, as in, you look sad, can I do anything? That is a positive politeness. Another instance is where you use solidarity in group identity markers. as in, hey mates, can you lend me $1,000? Or hey mate, can you lend me 1,000 kwacha? Here you can see how mate has been used. It is an in-group identity marker. Or you just have to be optimistic, as in, I'll just come along if you don't mind. That again is a positive politeness strategy. Another strategy is where you include both speaker and hearer in the activity. A statement like, if we help each other, I guess we'll both sink or swim in this pragmatics course. The usage of we in this case includes both the speaker and the hearer, and that is again a positive politeness strategy. Sometimes you can simply offer or promise, as in, if you wash the dishes, I'll mop the floor, or exaggerate interest in hearer and his interest. A typical example here would be, that's a nice haircut you got. Where did you get it? Or just avoid disagreement. So a statement that goes like, yes, he's rather long, not short, certainly. That works out as a positive politeness strategy also. Or maybe joke, wow, that's my monster, referring to an energetic man. The third strategy has to do with negative politeness, and negative politeness strategies are oriented towards the hearer's negative face and emphasize avoidance of imposition on the hearer. Remember that negative face is the desire not to be imposed upon. So, where you emphasize on avoidance of imposition on the hearer, that is a negative politeness strategy. This strategy presumes that the speaker will be imposing on the listener, and there is a higher potential for awkwardness or embarrassment than in board on record and positive politeness strategy. Negative face, like we said earlier, is the desire to remain autonomous. So the speaker is right to include an out for the listener through distancing styles like apologies. Examples from Brown and Levinson's book include that you be indirect, as in, would you know where Oxford Street is? That's being indirect, and that is a negative politeness strategy. Or indeed, use hedges or questions, as in a statement like, perhaps he might have taken it, maybe, or could you please pass the rice? Another way is to be pessimistic, as in, you couldn't find your way to lending me $1,000. Could you? That's avoidance of imposition, and therefore a negative politeness strategy. Another way is to minimize the imposition, as in the statement, it's not too much out of your way, just a couple of blocks, trying to minimize the imposition on the hearer. Another way is to use obviating structures like nominalizations or passives or statements of general rules. An example would be a statement like, I hope offense will not be taken. Or, visitors sign the ledger, as a general rule. Or, spitting will not be tolerated, again as a general rule. When you use such obviating structures, you are also employing a negative politeness strategy. Another way is to apologize, as in, I'm sorry, it's a lot to us, but can you lend me $1,000? Or use plural pronouns. We regret to inform you. So, favor seeking or a speaker asking the hearer for a favor is a common example of negative politeness strategy in use. All of this is done in an attempt to avoid a great deal of imposition on the hearer and is concerned with proceeding towards a goal in the smoothest way and with sensitivity to one's interlocutors. So an English statement that goes like, excuse me sir, could you please close the window? Such a statement is associated with the avoidance or downplaying of an imposition, and therefore that again is a negative politeness strategy. The other strategy is doing the FTA off record or being indirect. This strategy uses indirect language and removes the speaker from the potential to be imposing. For example, a speaker using the indirect strategy might merely say, Wow, it's getting cold in here, insinuating that it would be nice if the listener would get up and switch off the fan without directly asking the listener to do so. Now, having talked about all these strategies, the question that one would ask is, so which strategy do we choose? Choice of strategy is the next thing that we're going to talk about. Paul Grice argues that all conversationalists are rational beings who are primarily interested in the efficient conveying of messages. Brown and Levinson use this argument in their politeness theory by saying that rational agents will choose the same politeness strategy as any other would under the same circumstance to try to mitigate first. What it means here is if you're a rational agent, you should be able to use the same strategy as any other would given a particular situation. Brown and Levinson show the available range of verbal politeness strategies to redress loss of face. Face-threatening acts have the ability to mutually threaten face. Therefore, rational agents seek to avoid face-threatening acts or will try to use certain strategies to minimize the threat. To do so, the speaker will weigh the following. 1. They want to communicate the content of the FTA in question. That is it really very important that I should communicate this? That's the first thing that the speaker will weigh. Secondly, they want to be efficient or urgent. Is it urgent? Is it something that has to be communicated immediately? Thirdly, they want to maintain hearers' face to any degree. Do I need to save the face of the hearer? In most cooperative circumstances, where 3 is greater than 2, speaker will want to minimize the FTA. That is, where the speaker feels that the want to maintain the hearer's face is greater than the want to be efficient or urgent, then the speaker will minimize the FTA. What it means here is the greater the potential for loss of face requires greater redressive action. If the potential for loss of face is too great, the speaker may even make a decision to abandon the FTA completely and say nothing. So the strategies below are numbered, and the number next to each strategy corresponds to the danger level of the particular face-threatening act. So the more dangerous the particular FTA is, the more the speaker will tend to use a higher numbered strategy. The strategies are as follows. 1. No redressive action. Here, the speaker will simply go board on record, leaving no way for hearer to minimize the FTA. 2. Positive redressive action. Speaker satisfies a wide range of hearers' desires, not necessarily related to the FTA. Speaker may show interest in hearer, claim common ground with hearer, seek agreement, or give sympathy. 3. Negative redressive action. Here, speaker satisfies hearers' desires to be unimpeded. The want that is directly challenged by the FTA. How is he going, or how is she going to achieve this? The speaker has to be conventionally indirect, minimize imposition on hearer, or beg forgiveness, or give deference or respect. This implies that the matter is important enough for speaker to disturb hearer. 4th is off record. Here, speaker has the opportunity to evade responsibility by claiming that hearer's interpretation of the utterance as an FTA was wrong. The 5th and last strategy is just don't do the FTA. Now, what are the benefits? What are the payoffs associated with each of the strategies that we've talked about? In deciding which strategy to use, the speaker runs through the individual payoffs associated with each strategy. What are the payoffs associated with board on record strategy? There is plead for public pressure. Speaker gets credit for honesty, outspokenness, which avoids the danger of seeming controlling. Speaker avoids danger of being misunderstood. What about the payoffs associated with positive politeness? It minimizes threatening aspect by assuring that speaker considers to be of the same kind with hearer. Criticism may lose much of its sting if done in a way that asserts mutual friendship. When speaker includes himself equally as a participant in the request or offer, it may even lessen the potential for FTA debt. For example, let's say where a speaker, in this case the wife, says, "Let's get on with the dinner," to a husband in front of the TV watching football. The negative politeness strategy. The payoffs here are the following. It helps avoid future debt by keeping social distance and not getting too familiar with the addressee. It pays respect by assuming that you may be intruding on the hearer in return for the FTA. Like in a statement like, "I don't mean to bother you, but can I ask you a quick question?" Here, surely you are paying respect through the assumption that you may be intruding on the hearer in return for the first threatening act. What about the payoffs associated with doing the FTA off record? You get credit for being tactful or non-coercive. You avoid responsibility for the potentially first damaging interpretation. You give the addressee an opportunity to seem to care for speaker because it tests hearer's feelings towards speaker. How? If speaker wants hearer to close the window, he may say, "It's cold in here," instead of saying, "Close the window," which is going to be bought on record. Now, if hearer answers, "I'll go close the window then," it means he is responding to this potentially threatening act by giving a gift to the original speaker, and therefore speaker avoids the potential threat of ordering hearer around, and hearer gets credit for being generous or cooperative. What about the payoffs associated with not doing the FTA altogether? Speaker avoids offending hearer at all. However, speaker also fails to achieve his desired communication. So these are the payoffs associated with each of the strategies. And so it is up to the speaker to choose which strategy to use in which situation. But remember, Brown and Levinson are saying each and every competent adult is supposed to choose the same strategy given a particular situation. Having reached this far, let's now turn to sociological variables. In all said and done, what you ought to remember also is to take into consideration 3 sociological factors when deciding whether and how to use the various strategies in real-life situations. So it all depends on 3 factors. 1, social distance between the parties involved, otherwise called symmetric relation. Here, what you're supposed to do is to distinguish a kin or a friend from a stranger with whom you may be of the same social status, but who is still separated by social distance. Different FTAs are used depending on the social distance between interlocutors or the people involved in the dialogue or conversation. For example, we may use less elaborate positive strategies, or we may choose to use positive rather than negative politeness when speaking with family because of the social distance. Secondly, The other sociological variable that ought to be considered is power relations between parties, also called asymmetric relation. The bottom line is we are inclined to speak to our social equals differently than those whose status is higher or lower than our own in a given situation. For example, if a professor is working in her office and people are being very loud and disruptive in the next room, she will go over there and tell them to be quiet. But the way she does it will differ depending on who it is. If they are students, she will use the board on record strategy to make sure that there is no confusion in what she is saying. So she may simply go like, "Stop talking so loud." But if they are colleagues, she will claim common ground with them using the positive politeness strategy, or frame an indirect request for them to stop talking. For example, she might say, "I'm working on a lecture and it's really hard to concentrate with all this noise." If the situation is that the people making noise are really high status directors of the department, she may end up saying nothing at all, or indeed apologize for interrupting them, in which case it means she's not doing the FTA at all. The third sociological variable is the absolute ranking of the threat of the FTA. Some impositions are greater than others. Highly imposing acts demand more redress or remedy to mitigate their increased threat level. This is where we end the presentation, and next we'll be looking at Leach's theory of politeness. Thank you.